Thank you very much to Lloyd Elias, not too sure how it's pronounced, but thank you very much to you, Lloyd, for becoming the first member of the Kinetic Rugby League channel. If you would like to become a member of this channel, you can click the join button just below this video, and I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you. Hey guys, hope you're well. My name is Rob. Welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my Super League Round 26 power rankings. Let's get started. Starting in 12th place and still in 12th, I have Hull FC. Unfortunately, there is nothing for them to fall back on. There's no attack that can get them out of trouble if they concede too many. There isn't a defence that they've got that can slow the roll of the opponents. Confidence must be at an all-time low right now, and they are now at the bottom of Super League. There isn't much I can say about this team. Maybe there are some young lads for next season that could be worth a few more games, a few extra minutes. The only positive for them, I think, is that there will be some people in this team who will feature next season regularly, who will have a different head coach, maybe a different philosophy, different mindset, be around different players, and would just be better overall for hopefully a new experience next year. But yeah, it's an absolute mess for Hull FC right now, so they're still in 12th. Moving on to 11th place and still in 11th, I've got the London Broncos. I was hoping that they could get it done against Catalans. There was a chance there. They took an 8-0 lead, and then the game just started to get away from them a little bit. Maybe there's a chance late on. Catalans got a sin bin, but they couldn't really capitalise on the back of that. So London are still chipping away here and there. They do have some good moments in attack where they can put up some points, and then over the last couple of weeks and months, they have improved a little bit with the defence in some games. Catalans are not a great team, but I'll get onto them later. But London, I think they should be very proud of kind of the efforts that they're putting in, and the fact that they're putting some teams under pressure that in the first half of the season and the first few weeks especially, there was no chance. I think these two, they played in round 2. They played later on in the season as well, but they played in round 2. I believe Catalans just wiped the floor with them, and then to be able to actually beat them later in the season and have another competitive game just shows the work that they've done over the course of the season, how much they've improved. But yeah, London Broncos still in 11th. Moving on to 10th place, and still in 10th, I have the Huddersfield Giants. I think it is very possible that next week they could be moved down, depending on how the result goes against Castleford and how London does against Warrington. It's going to be difficult for London to get a foothold in that game, but we'll have to see how that game goes, and there is a chance that Huddersfield could move down again. Their performance against Warrington was abysmal. They had nothing going for them. A few times they'd spread the ball a little bit, get some extra meters in like the middle third of the park, but there's just nothing to really sing and dance about with this team. They did have a bunch of players missing, either dropped or out, unavailable, but they just had nothing going for them. There weren't really these carries through the middle that got the quick play of the balls. The kicking game felt completely flat. There was no attempt to really go at Warrington with any kind of creative plays. Some of the youngsters had a go. They had their moments. They got involved, but just nothing. There's just nothing positive about this Huddersfield team right now, apart from, can Luke Robinson get a tune out of them next season, and can they get some more minutes for youngsters? But that is it. It's pretty abysmal for the Giants right now. So Huddersfield still in 10th. Moving on to 9th place, and still in 9th, I've got the Castleford Tigers. They are still a pretty poor team overall. I do think they still have an attack to fall back on. They are a team that can be resilient defensively in some games, and that's the reason why they're still above Huddersfield at the moment. We'll have to see how that game goes next week as well. But I do feel like there's at least something to this team that they could have a say in some games. They could influence some matches, whereas Huddersfield, I don't think they can have a say at all in key moments, like who can make a top 2, top 3, who can make playoffs. I don't think they have any involvement in that kind of thing, whereas Castleford, they have an attack to fall back on. They can be strong defensively, and that's the difference for me. I think if Castleford can win next week, they solidify that place above Huddersfield. The fact that they weren't absolutely demolished as badly as Huddersfield is the only positive, and they scored points, whereas Huddersfield didn't. But yeah, that's... God, that gap between those two is minimal. So depending on what happens next week, I suppose the winner probably takes 9th spot, and I'm sure they'll be delighted with that. But Castleford still in 9th. Moving on to 8th place, and still in 8th, I've got the Catalans Dragons. How are these guys still in with a chance of making the playoffs. How has this mess of a team swindled their way into playoff contention? I know they had a pretty easy run towards the back end of the season with, I think it was London twice, Hull FC twice, maybe Huddersfield, and there's a couple of other games that should have been easy for them. Even though they were, struggling slightly, this should have been easy for them. And the fact that they've messed up so many games that they should have easily won, I don't understand how they're still within a chance of making the playoffs. This is ridiculous. So they will be Saints fans next week. It's always a dark time when you have to be a Saints fan. I've had that before. It's horrible. But yeah, Catalans, they're just, in attack, they're so dull. It happens with a couple teams. It happened with Warrington last year and the year before. It's just everyone stood in a line waiting to receive the ball, hoping that the next man receiving the ball does something with it, and then maybe they'll feed off the back of it. That's what they're doing. It's just a straight line, no creativity, no depth, no identity in that team. Defensively, they can have their moments, but can be opened up by great attacking teams pretty easily. There just doesn't really feel like there's any fire, any fight in that team. It's just, I don't know, it feels like they're sort of scraping by week. And if they make it into the top 6, oh my lord. Now, if they get to 6th, then that means a home game against Warrington, or away at Warrington, I should say, which I'll take, but wow, I don't know how they're doing it. But Catalans Dragons still in 8th. Moving on to 7th and moving down 1, I've got the Leeds Rhinos. I think even with Lockie Miller missing, there just isn't really an excuse for the lack of quality and the lack of intent. It didn't feel like, even though they're getting beaten up through the middle, I understand that. So they were getting beaten up through the middle, not a good start. Field position wasn't great, also not a good start. But to not really try and line up a lot of set plays, like even if you've got the ball on your own 20, on your own 30, it's like, just have a go. Worst case scenario, it's an interception and you're down 30-0. You're already getting battered. You're already getting beaten through the middle. You can't keep up with them. At what point do you just say, well, why don't we actually try something different and actually chuck the ball around instead of just this flat line, taking a few carries, and Frawley kicking the ball directly to the fullback and wingers? That gets right on my nerves when sevens do that. They kick the ball directly to the receivers. What are you doing? Who are you helping aside from the opponents? It's just the same thing again and again and again, and they just couldn't keep up with anything that Wigan was doing. Defensively, very poor. In attack, very poor. Completely clueless in what they wanted to do. Are still better than Catalans, unfortunately. But yeah, Leeds down 1 in 7th. Moving on to 6th place and moving up 1, I've got St Helens. Great dominant performance last week. They needed something like that, especially with more players coming back in, with maybe confidence in the younger lads being shot a little bit. That they've been put under a lot of pressure. They'll want to start coming up with wins, and big wins at that, coming into playoffs. They've also got a big game coming up against Leigh. They needed a result like this. They need to prove to themselves, not just everybody else, but to themselves especially, that we can still compete. People will still say, oh, it's only Castleford, but I hate when people say that because, again, not everyone has done that to Castleford. The same argument I made last week of when Leeds battered Hull FC, not everyone has done it to Hull FC. Some people have, but not everyone has. So you still have to go out there, perform, put up those points, still have to be strong enough defensively. So the fact that they can prove to themselves that they can be that kind of dominant force again. They were pretty strong early on, took a bit of a dip mid-season, even before all the major injury problems, but I think that really helps them with their confidence. It shows people that in terms of their attack, they're still to be taken seriously, because when they've got all their key pieces in there, they can certainly open up teams. Defensively, I still think there's a bit of work to be done, but it's a good start for them and a good sign for them coming into a big game and getting ready to compete with the better teams in the league. So St Helens up 1 in 6th. Moving on to 5th place, and still in 5th, I've got the Salford Red Devils. It's looking pretty good for them at the moment. I'm still unsure about their ability to compete near the very top. They have definitely taken the fight to some, They have beaten Hull KR this season. They've been close to beating Wigan once or twice this season, I think, at least once. They've beaten Warrington. Not sure about Leigh. Not too sure. But they've definitely had moments this season where they've competed with the top teams. And I think it's a great opportunity this week to put a lot of pressure on Wigan, because I don't think people necessarily expect Salford to win. But I think for their own confidence, their own good, being able to set a tone going into playoffs, they don't need to get the win, but if they could do something like they did much early on in the season before they kind of threw it away in the last 2 or 3 minutes, if anyone remembers that game from the short dropout, which was a ridiculous decision again. But Salford can set a tone. They don't necessarily need to get the 2 points, but to be able to set a tone against Wigan would be a good sign for them, and it just sort of co-signs the consistency that they're building, with the attack looking better, the defence looking better, just putting in good solid performances over the last couple of weeks and just being more consistent. So Salford doing a good job right now, but they're still in 5th. Moving on to 4th place and moving down one, I've got the Leigh Leopards. I think they should have probably competed a little bit better in this game. At least points. For the attack that they can boast, or they have boasted this season, I was expecting at least some points. The fact that they were nilled, yes, is testament to Hull Kingston Rovers, who we'll get on to, but Leigh, I think they should be very disappointed with that, and it's not a good sign going into playoffs. You want to know that you can at least compete for 80 minutes or for long portions of the game with the top teams. So that might have a big knock on their confidence, and they have another big game coming up against Saints, who they can kind of help to build some confidence back up from. But to just be non-competitive in that game, it's not a good sign. I don't think it's the end of the world, given some of the results they've had over the last couple of weeks and months. It's not the end of the world, but it's not a good time to be dominated like that and have that kind of result. It's just not good timing. If there's still a few more weeks to go until playoffs, there's a chance to turn it around, but timing on this one is a bit poor. I think based on other results as well with teams around them, they deserve to move down as someone deserves to move up. So Leigh Leopards down 1 in 4th. Moving on to 3rd place and moving up 1, I've got the Warrington Wolves. I think their performance over Huddersfield was completely clean. There was maybe a few errors here and there, a few penalties, but not many that really spring to mind that we could have done better on. There was a Matty Nicholson sort of late shot, but I think discipline-wise, pretty clean. No issues on that side. We always look like scoring when we got into good field position, so that's another positive. We beat them up through the middle. I think Danny Walker starting was a huge help as well. Made us a lot quicker through the middle, quicker ruck speed and penetrating runs as well. Trying to get some line breaks, a 40-20 in there as well always helps to get that extra field position. Defensively, very, very solid. I think the moments where we looked to be opened up was off the back of chaotic moments. I mentioned in my TikTok video, it wasn't necessarily off the back of Huddersfield creating moments from their own plays. It was just a bit of chaos. And Huddersfield nearly came up with some points. But overall, defensively, solid in front of our own try line, solid in the middle, and in terms of attack with the ball, pretty quick. I didn't like how we dropped off towards the middle of in the middle portion of the game. Last 10 minutes of the first half, first 15-20 of the second half. It felt like a parking the bus type feel. Was like sitting back, not really going at them, just going through the motions. But then we switched it on, last 20 minutes, had a go, and we started really piling up the points late on. I did want to get to 70 or even 80, but I will certainly take 66-0. But it's a good sign. There have been a couple of lackluster performances in attack over the last few weeks. There are some to point out, but that is a really good sign. Yes, it's against a very young, inexperienced Huddersfield team, but it's a good sign, and they have the opportunity to go again against London next week and show that they can keep that consistency up. But Warrington Wolves up 1 in 3rd. Moving on to 2nd place, and still in 2nd, I've got the Hull Kingston Rovers. What more could you ask for, really? Against a very strong team, both in attack and in defence, like Leigh Leopards, what more could you ask for? That's the kind of performance, a kind of game that would easily put them into 1st place on these power rankings if it wasn't for the other team being so dominant as well in their game. But you couldn't ask for much more against such a strong team like Leigh. There was the possibility that after the loss to Wigan that they could have dropped in confidence, but we all knew that based on the sin bins in there that they were still completely competitive. They know that they're still a quality side in attack and in defence, and they showed that against such strong opponents. Again, they're really setting a tone. They are still telling the rest of the league that we are keeping up with this pace. We are keeping up with this quality in attack and in defence. Nothing is slowing us down, except for the only other team that's right near the top with us in some occasions during that game. But yeah, whole Kingston Rovers right now just looking really, really good. I don't know who and when they could be knocked off their perch. I really do not know. They're just looking dominant. They're not getting rattled at all. They're just professional, clean, effective, executing well. They're just staying on their process and they're getting it done. So whole Kingston Rovers still in second. Finally, in first place, and still in first place, I've got the Wigan Warriors. As I said, Hull KR could have moved up based on their performance if it wasn't for such a dominant, well-controlled performance from Wigan against Leeds. They just allowed Leeds to do nothing. There wasn't any cheap line breaks in there that it felt like. There probably was maybe some that I'm forgetting, but it didn't feel like when I was watching the game, oh, well, they need to be a little bit stronger here on the edges or through the middle. They're just allowing some cheap stuff. They look well controlled defensively. The kicking game was fine. The kick chases were great as well. They're really starting to destroy teams, especially down that left-hand side. Junior Nsemba's moved from the right to the left. Fowler's now moved from the left to the right. So they've got Nsemba, Wardle, and Marshall down the left-hand side, which is ridiculous. And Harry Smith is not having to do too much with the run game, but is linking up nicely. And his accurate passes allow players like Wardle to keep attacking the edges, keep getting the leverage on that side without having to slow down to receive the ball. He can take the ball in stride, create the overlap, and then it's out to Marshall. But yeah, on that left-hand side, Wigan look fantastic. And then over on the right, Jay Field and Bevan French do seem to be shifting over onto that side. I think they aren't quite as potent down that side. It doesn't feel like they are anyway. But when French has got the ball, he can just create anything from absolutely nothing, which is ridiculous. To have that in your locker is insane. Completely dominant. The kicking game was good. And yeah, just overall defensively solid. In attack, really creative, really dominant. And the forwards, again, setting a great platform. When you look at the forward pack of Wigan, it is insane. And when you can bring on Patrick Mago, Jesus Christ. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. Because you can set a platform with Dupree, Havard and Thompson. They're the usuals that might start. Or you could still bring on Dupree. You could bring on Patrick Mago. It is just unbelievable what they have available off the bench. But yeah. And even O'Neill when he's available. And then Cruz Leeming to come off the bench. Just the squad that they've got. And the discipline that they play with as well is just ridiculous. But yeah, Wigan Warriors still in first. So that is going to be it for my Super League Round 26 power rankings. Once again, if you would like to become a member of the Kinetic Rugby League YouTube channel, you can click the join button down below and join people like Lloyd as fantastic supporters of this channel. But that is going to be it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.